Hey everyone, welcome to this video. I am in South Africa, which is why I'm on a bed. And I have done this video recording on my phone, so it might not be the best quality. I'm also going to show you some photos of my trip so far. They're wild. There's 4 of them. You're only getting 4 photos, sorry. And then we're going to do a Hogger deck without talents at red level and a Hogger deck with talents at red level. So you're going to have 2 Hogger decks this time round for the dungeon, and hopefully it helps you guys. So yeah, let's get into it. Here we are feeding some elephants. This is really cute. Here's a really lovely beach called Buffles Bay. It's awesome. Here's my ass and me trying to teach my son how to fish. And here's a rhino. There you go. That's my trip. Let's start off with the no talent version of this deck then. It is obviously Hogger, Quillboar, Prowler, Defias Bandits, Execute, Safe Pilot, and Murloc Tidehunters. Pretty cheap and cheerful, gets the job done. We're all about cycling Hogger. Execute is really useful for a multitude of the levels in this dungeon. And the reason we're not including Harpies and instead including Murloc Tidehunters is because they're cheaper and we just want to cycle a bit more quickly. Let's start off with Stomper Krieg. And this level is actually relatively easy if you know what you're doing. Really, you just need to be able to use the enemies to your advantage, usually around core objectives. You might want to be using the enemies around things like the towers or around Stomper Krieg himself. Now, I will say you kind of need to have a relatively solid opening hand here. There's a couple of things that you want to do. You want to safe pilot the group on the left to try and burn their HP down as much as possible so that you can kind of force them to start attacking each other. And then you really want to be able to use Execute on the second group near that tower, and you ideally want to include the tower in that Execute because that just does a load of damage and it will help you take that structure a bit more readily. Now, unfortunately, I didn't quite get the start that I wanted here, and I took a bit of damage to the tower. Obviously, haven't been able to set up a push on that right-hand side tower. The best possible start is that you're able to get a push on that right-hand side tower that essentially then allows you to take that tower within the first sort of 50 seconds. If you can take that first tower, it really sets you up for success for the rest of this level. Now, it's not the end of the world if you don't take that tower early on. The best thing with Hogger decks is that the longer the game goes, the better it's going to be for you, because obviously you want to cycle Hogger out as much as possible. Once you've cycled Hogger out 3 times, you're going to maximize the benefits that you're getting from his passive, but that just then means you've got a very strong 4-cost mini to play at all times. Now, what you'll find here is that obviously, as you can see, we've got a couple of Warsong Grunts that are spawned very close to this tower. And that will happen on Stomper Krieg until you take the towers. He will be a bit more aggressive with the spawning of his Warsong Grunts. And I'm going to show you eventually a cool little tactic that you can use with Execute to make sure that you're getting a huge amount of value out of it, as well as also putting pressure on the boss. This time round, though, as you can see, it's been a bit more of a struggle to take these towers. And you'll also notice that I finally figured out the relic that I actually picked up for this first level, and it was Leeching Poison. So I actually got Leeching Poison as a first relic, because you can see that both my Prowler and my Quillboar healed up from attacking that tower, which is quite nice. And Leeching Poison is a very, very good relic for Hogger as well, because he is a melee unit, so he's going to get a huge amount of HP back. Now here you go, that's exactly right there. If you just caught it at the top of the screen, I used Execute on the Warsong Grunts as they were walking past Krieg. Now that is a really, really cool little tactic that you can use to ensure that you proc, especially if you've got a high enough level Execute. You will probably find that if your Execute is like 1 or 2 levels below, my Execute level is 1 level below, but let's say if your Execute is 2 levels below, it might not be enough to actually proc the Bloodlust. But if you have an Execute of a sufficient level, you can proc the Bloodlust ability on those Warsong Grunts, and they will start attacking each other, and they will also aggro Krieg, which then means Krieg will do a huge amount of work at taking down those minis. And once those minis go down, it's obviously a mini that you don't have to contend with. And then eventually, what really then ends up happening is that Krieg kind of becomes just ensuring that you have Execute for the Warsong Grunts like this. You can see I used it and caught Krieg and the Warsong Grunts in the Execute. And all it is then is just ensuring that you have the Execute ready, and you're then just essentially cycling minis into Krieg. Hogger will do a significant amount of work by himself at this stage of the game. If you get a good Prowler charge, it will also do the job, and eventually you can finish things off with a safe pilot as well. And that, my friends, is how you beat Stomper Krieg with a relative ease, especially using Execute. Now we're going to run on to the next boss, but I'm also, of course, first going to show you the relic that we got. Okay, so we have Leeching Poison. We actually didn't get great relic choices, and this is why this video ended up taking a little bit longer to actually produce, is that I was really kind of struggling to get these dungeon levels done. The no talent version was tough, and then the talented version was also quite tough. But we ended up going with, I think we went with the spiderlings that spawn on leader use, which is good because we actually want to play our leader. Now you'll find in some decks, like some dungeon decks, you actually don't want to play your leader. So in this one, we actually do want to play our leader because obviously Hogger is an important part of the deck. So what we're doing here is versus the Banshee, our best answer is either going to be Murloc Tidehunters, Kobold, or then just dropping a safe pilot on top. In this case, we just dropped a safe pilot on top. Now, versus this boss, there are a couple of tactics that you can use, and it really depends on kind of the setup that you have, how confident you are, and kind of what you think you can get done. But in this case, I went for the side tower. There is a very viable tactic where you don't go for the side tower, and you simply use the meeting stone that I've just spawned Hogger at, and use Quillbore like this. So you just do this over and over again, basically. You make sure you have Quillbore, you make sure you have Hogger or something, and you just use that meeting stone on the left to constantly pressure the boss. But, you know, the core tactic of this boss is that you turn it away using Quillbore, because Quillbore can tank it quite well. And then you use your high DPS minis to just kind of put pressure on it from afar. That's essentially the very, very sort of loose way to play this boss. If you were running a deck with Fire Elemental, because I have talked about this in the past, if you're running a deck with Fire Elemental, you could just send Fire Elemental up the left-hand side, and that becomes basically a solo tank, especially with Leeching Poison. It can basically solo the boss. But because we're not running Fire Elemental in this deck, because it's difficult to get it into a slot, we are instead just going to use this tactic where we drop Quillbore like this, and then we have Hogger come down at this side. Now, what I could do here is actually execute Hogger and the boss. Oh wait, I don't actually have, obviously we're running the no talent version here, so there isn't really much point using execute the boss other than to try to cycle it out. But you know, we're basically taking it out here, so we spawn another Hogger and everything is good. So that was a very simple kill onto Imolthar, which was good. We like that. We're going to move on to our final boss, which is obviously... Okay, we're going on to the final boss now, and again, we don't have brilliant relics. We have the healing every, like 10% health every 5 seconds, which is not particularly a great deal. We have the Band of the Arcanist, but we also have Beast Minis deal 30% more damage. Now, given we tend to group everything up versus King Gordok, this is pretty good for us. And with King Gordok, it can be a bit of a tough fight. A lot of it is timing, and a lot of it is luck, and in terms of spawn patterns and stuff like that. But essentially, there's a very basic tactic that you want to try and follow if you can, which is essentially kill both of the side lieutenants at roughly the same time. You'd ideally like those side lieutenants to end up near King Gordok at the similar time, which then allows them to kind of both enact their ability on the boss. You want to spawn a Kobold on the right-hand side before you spawn a Kobold on the left-hand side, because the right-hand side has more gold spawns early on, so you're going to get more value out of the Kobold. And then the next time you cycle the Kobold, you can then cycle it over to the left. Now, you want to try and split resource. As you can see here, I've sent a Prowler and my... I think I've sent Prowler and Hogger towards the left-hand side lieutenant. I then sent a Prowler over with the rest of my units over towards the right-hand side lieutenant. And what you'll find is that the AI chooses a side to put pressure on, which basically means that one of the lieutenants ends up taking a lot longer to get to the boss than the other. So you then have to think about how you're going to commit resources to help support that lieutenant move over. And as you can see, my left-hand side lieutenant I took a little bit too quickly has already ended up at the boss, which is not a great situation to be in. We're going to send over our Hogger, but the very likely scenario here is, because the AI continues to send things over towards my right-hand side lieutenant, we're probably going to have to retake that lieutenant on the left-hand side. And then we're going to have to try and reset this entire fight. And that's kind of what you've got to do once you're, well, you know, like for instance, my left lieutenant's got another set of Warsong Grunts. I'm not going to rush these Warsong Grunts. I will try and protect the HP on that lieutenant as much as possible, but I'm not going to rush these Warsong Grunts. I'm also very willing to use my Execute on things like those Grunts, simply because it means we can kind of allow that right-hand side lieutenant to kind of catch up and get towards
Gordok at about the same time. And now we've kind of timed this much better this time round. Now, another tactic that we ideally want to use in this boss is use Execute to catch the healer. Execute does a lot of damage on the healer. It doesn't actually look like I'm going to need to use it this time round because my spiderlings are stacking poison. We have Hogger going to town. We're going to spawn a Prowler here as well. But a good tactic for this boss is actually, if you can keep the boss engaged and you can cycle Execute while the boss is engaged, you can take out the healer usually in 2 to 3 Execute cycles, depending on the level of the fight that you're going up against. But in this case, I didn't actually need to because we timed the side lieutenants to attack the boss at a similar time, and we were just able to stack up beast units around Hogger, which worked out really well in the end, and that has given us our level 27 win with absolutely no talents, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted, and now I can show you guys the talent deck. Okay, the talent version of the deck is pretty simple. It's basically the same deck that we were running before. We have just swapped out Murloc Tidehunters for Harpies. Why have we done that? Poison Talon is the highest DPS talent in the game, and it just turns your Harpies into boss shredders, which is very important when you're going up levels with this deck. We're running Hamhock on Hogger, we're running Prowler with the Stealth talent, we're running Quillball with the Poison talent, but you really can run any talent on Quillball. The only reason I'm running Quillball with the Poison talent is it adds an extra stack, which works well with Harpies. We're running Picklock on our Bandits because it's just very useful on the first level. We're running, as I mentioned, Poison Talon on Harpies. Bloodthirst on Execute, which can be very useful for killing bosses off by also synergizing well with Hogger. And we're running Coming In Hot on our Safe Pilot. But you can run Gnomish Cloaking Device if you want, but Coming In Hot is just better for the second boss. I'll talk about it in action. Okay, so we had absolutely awful relics for the first boss. We had Tainted Power Core, which was the best option that we had, but frankly that's a very good defensive talent, but not exactly great when you're wanting to actually kill things. So yeah, not the best situation to be in terms of relics. In this situation here, you can see as well, we haven't got a good opening hand right now, so we're going to just use a very early Execute to kind of make that Mountaineer more likely to die to the tower, also deal a boatload of damage to the tower too, and then we're going to spawn Hogger and our Defias Bandits, which help us secure this chest and also deal with these Warsong Grunts that are right outside our base. Now, that was a good Execute because it is essentially set up for a very early tower take, and very early tower takes are important in this level because it just allows us to essentially start putting pressure on the boss through Executes. The similar strategy that I showed you on the previous no talent run works extremely well with the talent run as well. You just want to be looking for Execute opportunities to take out these Warsong Grunts when they are close to Krieg, because you want those you want Krieg to essentially do a lot of the work for you. And in this case, we haven't seen any Warsong Grunts yet, but we do now have our tower up, which is going to help us defend against the Huntress. We're going to drop a Prowler, because Prowler is good against Huntress and also good against Ogre Mage, which is what we're doing right now. And we also have to think about going for this second tower too. Now you can see there's a Mountaineer up here. I'm actually going to use Safe Pilot to proc the Mountaineer. That does enough damage to kind of at least take out the high DPS part of the Mountaineer, which is also the actual Hunter on the back line. We're going to use Execute kind of more aggressively in this scenario, mostly because there is a lot of high value targets right here, and we want to essentially take down this tower as quickly as possible for the same reason that we want to take down the left hand side tower. It stops forward spawns of the grunts, and it also means that we can start to threaten Krieg a bit more effectively. Now, the one good thing about Toxic Core is that it does make defense significantly easier. It stacks poison every 3 seconds, which just means that things around the base are going to start to die a little bit more readily than they would do otherwise, which is great. We're going to now essentially look for opportunities to go for, like I said, just looking for any opportunities to get minis that are spawning near Krieg. We're going to try and stop them from actually getting to us. That's the very basic explanation. We kind of want to stop minis getting to us. We'd like them to stay near Krieg and die near Krieg. Like right there, double Ogre Mage spawn. Obviously Krieg's mechanic is that he spawns Ogre Mages every so often, but double Ogre Mage spawn right there. We're going to use an Execute just to make sure that they both go down before they ever get close to our base, which is exactly what we want. Now Hogger's also doing a great job right now, by the way. He is kind of at that point in the game where he's able to do a significant amount of work. Unfortunately, because the Ogre Mage kept getting the last hit on his own tower, it means that we actually never spawned our tower, so Hogger just kept getting stuck on the tower before he was able to take out the Ogre Mage in the backline, which is okay. We finally get the last hit here, and then Hogger is now going towards to threatening the boss, which is great. We're in a good spot. I don't know why I spawned Harpies there, by the way. That was a misclick. I was kind of like hanging out with my son whilst I was doing this, so I misclicked Harpies when I actually meant to play Prowler. So in that scenario, I would never play Harpies into Huntress. I would really ideally play Prowler into Huntress because it's a direct counter. We use the execute trick there just on the Warsong Grunts to make them less of a threat, and it just means we can start to actually put pressure on the base. We can use our Defiance Bandits to open the gold chest here, which is very important because we actually are in a situation where we could really do with the gold. We wouldn't usually be in that situation, but yeah, we're kind of in a situation where we could actually really do with the gold here. So the Defiance Bandits, just in this particular boss, like I said, are really good. We also want to try and save execute where we can to take the DOS. I think I probably could have got away with not executing those Warsong Grunts there, but we actually have a bit of a threat on Krieg at the moment anyway. We have 30 seconds to go, so with the burn coming in, we had a bit of poison on him as well. We finally took him down, which was fine. We're quite happy about that. And we're going to move on to the next boss. Okay, we have pretty bad talents again, but we're going to go for Shadowblade. The reason we're going to go for Shadowblade is because we're running the stealth talent on Prowler. Usually, I would never take Shadowblade because I very rarely have stealth minis in my deck, or at least minis that have got stealth as part of their talent. But I'm going to take it this time around because we got... Oh, 1 second. Sorry. We're going to take it now because we've got Prowler. And Prowler, that means basically it can one-shot a lot of stuff. So we're going to run Prowler in this scenario. It also means that if we ever get Prowler onto the boss, if it's stealthed, it will deal a huge amount of damage on its first hit, which is exactly what we want. Now, this level, more than anything, is, especially when you're going up in levels like we are here, we're going up 2 levels, you really just need to have a solid defense. It's all about having a really, really solid defense. And you can see here, we are setting up the Quillball trick. So they are going to, the boss actually runs Chain Lightning. I actually never see the boss run Chain Lightning again on this level. It was the first time I've seen it run Chain Lightning. And I don't think you're going to see Chain Lightning again. So, kind of annoying, because that was essentially going to be a boss kill push. And I swear, I have never seen this boss otherwise run Chain Lightning. At least, it has never run it again in the same way that it has done just there. Even when I run Harpies at the boss again in the future, I don't have Chain Lightning. Really, really crazy here, by the way. We essentially, like, we survived this by the skin of our teeth, which you can see here. We have like 1 HP on the tower, which... in this scenario, we now need to defend with our lives, is essentially what we're doing. Defending every single moment with our lives. But this level is very much about the defense. And you can see here, I'm just defending as much as I can, trying to stop them getting to my base. We're going to pop a little kobold. We have that meeting stone. And you know I talked about the other tactic for this level where you kind of just ignore that side tower and you instead go for the meeting stone and just push from the meeting stone? That's what I'm doing. You're also seeing the 5 times damage from the Prowler there, which is fantastic. And now, with the Quillball and the Harpies, we're going to go straight at the boss. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. We just want to get we want to get the Harpies onto the boss. We want to start stacking poison. We're going to use our Defiance Bandits just to buy ourselves some time, and you're going to see the execute come down, which with the poison just about gets us over the line versus Imolthar, but it was very close. So we again don't have great relics for this last boss. We go for Howling Warband because it is literally the best of a worst bunch. There's no point going Airborne Toxin because we already have Poison Harpies, and we are definitely going to have more than 3 units on the field pretty much at all times. So we go for Howling Warband because it's the best of a bad bunch, which is interesting because you usually get Howling Warband offered to you at the start, which makes me feel they've changed the way that certain relics spawn. But nonetheless, what we're going to do here is just mount a solid defense at the start, get rid of those Warsong Grunts. We're going to pop a kobold over on the right hand side, and what you'll notice is that I've actually sent nothing towards the left hand side boss. The reason being is that classically you generally tend to have a lot more sent your way when you're spawning, trying to get the right hand side boss towards the towards the King Gordok. The reason being is that she is a lot slower, she takes down things a lot slower as well, but also her debuff is more important for you winning the game. The debuff that you get from the left-hand side boss, if you're going to run the execute strategy, doesn't actually matter that much, because if you can execute the guy who heals him down, then it doesn't really matter about having that the mortal strikes from your ogre boss. Now we take him down, which is really important. But he's going to be a little bit late to the party, as you can already see that my Quillbore and Silver Moon Lieutenant are heading towards the boss. Now she does actually land an AoE attack speed reduction, which is great, and we're starting to get that fight started. Now we're going to keep the side boss engaged with the Quillbore. This is really important. It just kind of helps. It kind of helps keep the fight going, and also kind of takes away some of the damage that some of your units will be receiving. And we're going to now start to cycle executes, and also start to spam unbounds onto the boss, onto the healing boss. Why are we doing this? We want to take him down with one more execute. So you're going to see me use another Quillbore here, and now we are simply waiting for one more execute to be able to take him down and take him out of the fight. Now once he's out of the fight, things become significantly easier. Even if these lieutenants reset, the boss will receive permanent damage every time we go for an attack, because he will not be re-healed out of it. And that is the benefit of the execute cycle strategy versus this boss, is that as long as you keep King Gordok and his healing lieutenant in combat, you can use execute on them and they won't re-heal. That's the most important part here, right? You have to keep King Gordok in combat, otherwise both his healing lieutenant and himself will heal out of combat. If you can't keep them in combat, you're going to end up having a bit of a tough time. So that's just the one thing to bear in mind. You really do need to keep them in combat to actually make this execute strategy work, which is why you really need that Blood Elf lieutenant, because her sort of, I don't know what it's called, like crippling poison or crippling whatever, the attack speed reduction, exhaust type attack from her is the only thing that kind of keeps the fight going long enough so that you can cycle execute. So it's therefore, it's not actually as important, other than having another tank, to have your other lieutenant in the fight. And once you've got that down, it's just about, again, spawning harpies, spawning hoggers, spawning five times damage prowlers like you're going to see here, and just chunk the boss down, because the boss now can no longer heal out of combat, which is great. And once he's low enough, you'll even be able to start execute cycling him as well, which you're going to see here. And it's just a case now of essentially trying to get another execute out, because he's basically 1 or 2 executes away from going down. We're going to use coming in hot, safe pilot to get the burn. We're then going to cycle our lowest cost minis, so we're going to put in Defiance Bandits. Actually, we're going to drop a Prowler. Prowler's fine here as well, but we have execute coming up, so we're going to cycle execute and take him down, which then gets us the win on this boss, which is fantastic. And that is the end of my 2 runs. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I think it's about to be a new year, so if you've watched towards this, then Happy New Year, Happy 2024. I'm recording this at like 11:50 at night, and I hope you guys have a good time, and hope you guys do well with this dungeon. I'll see you soon.